Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the That's Awesome podcast, episode 5, where we explore all things awesome. And today we have a very special guest, another guest that we were looking forward to, and that's affiliated with our newly opened Student Innovation Center, Caroline Zoe Schumm. Is that how you pronounce it correct?
It's Schumm, but
okay.
I mean, I'm good either way. So.
That's on me, but
no, it's totally fine.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Zoe currently serves as a graduate assistant in apparel merchandising and design within the Department of Apparel, Events, and Hospitality Management at Iowa State. She manages the digital aspects of Innovate 1858, but more specifically in the fall 2020 and spring 2020 semesters, Zoe focuses on the marketing and social media performance within the store and its newly operated functions within the Student Innovation Center. Zoe graduated from Kansas State University in 2011 with bachelor's degrees in apparel and textile design and marketing. And she serves as a member of Kansas State's College of Health and Human Sciences Professional Advisory Board, where she provides advice and leadership to students, faculty, and prospective students. Zoe also has extensive experience in the apparel and fashion industry and has a strong background in retail, digital arts, pattern grading, and technical illustration. Some of Zoe's past experiences include Champion GTM Sportswear, Education and More, which is a Christian nonprofit, Hutchinson Zoo in Hutchinson, Kansas, and design curation for custom bridal gowns. And Zoe is also the owner and designer at For All Humanity. She is the owner and designer for that company, which is a contemporary women's fair trade and ethically sourced apparel company aimed at empowering women to be themselves, show off their unique beauty, and use it to influence and empower to change the world. So Zoe, once again, thank you for coming on the show. I know I'm really excited to talk with you today because
that's great.
I have a background in marketing, and I also, you and I relate on a lot of levels. It's kind of funny because I like reading back on, your background and stuff and how you're very involved with social justice issues and alleviating some of the like poverty and stuff, and also like social media and marketing and stuff like that. So I feel like we have a lot of similarities, and I'm excited to cover the ground. So
yeah, awesome.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, apart from the education that I briefly touched on.
Yes, all those very nice things you said about me. You paint me in a very good light. So my background, I am from Kansas. I grew up there and lived there for 30 years. And it's just this past year when I started here at Iowa State, my family moved up here to Ames. So I am married and I have an 18-month-old daughter. So we actually are really enjoying Ames. My mom grew up here, so it's different, but it also kind of feels like home. So that's really, really nice. So after I graduated from Kansas State, I was a technical designer for GTM Sportswear, which is now owned by Champion. And there I got a ton of wonderful experience. I had wonderful mentors there. And that I think is really was very beneficial to me, and then the path that I took after that role. And so then I started a fair trade apparel company, not really knowing what I was doing, and I learned a lot from my failures. But as a startup, you just gain a lot of different skills that you wouldn't typically have if you were in a larger company. So that's really where I pulled in this the marketing side of my skill set. I didn't really have that prior to starting For All Humanity, and really upping my graphic design skills as well for that. Yeah, and then along the way, I partnered up and I teamed up with the Christian nonprofit Education and More, and they were really the way I connected with the cooperatives in Guatemala. So that is just super thankful for that. And then I worked at the zoo, which is like totally bizarre and random, but it actually was really quite nice. So I oversaw all of their private funding and all of like the PR stuff. Mm-hmm. So again, the marketing, and then also I did a lot of fundraising events for them. I wrote some grants, mm-hmm. oversaw the gift shop. So all of those types of things. Again, using my eclectic skill set. That's really, I honestly think I just have like a mishmash of skills. Mm-hmm. They all work together, but it's yeah, and it's so really it's just this. I feel like I've really used an entrepreneurial mindset and had to use varied skills, but I feel like they all kind of go together very well. Sure. And they complement each other. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And to touch on that a little bit too, you explained how it's quite bizarre in the sense that you've been, you started at Sportswear, and then you went to a nonprofit, and then you went to a zoo, and yeah. Now, and then you started your own business. You're all over the place, and I think that's like a really good thing, to be honest, because you talked about how you culminated skills, and it helped you grow a little.
Yeah, I think, as I think that students need to think that way, right? So I did not. The path that my career took was not planned out at all, but how it's evolved has been quite strategic by me as far as how to use the skills that I have to enhance what I'm doing now, right? And then it's, and part of it is how to frame up the skills that I have and how can I use those in this new role. And so I really think it's a very entrepreneurial mindset. Mm-hmm. And that, students now, as they come out of college, I really firmly believe that they need to be very entrepreneurial and think out of the box as far as how can I use my skills and in what role, right? Because, I went from a nonprofit to a zoo as a technical designer. And so, if you look at them, they don't really fit together, but I've used a lot of the same skills in each of those roles. So it's really, I think, quite fun, the varied roles that I've had and just the varied experiences.
Mm-hmm. Sure, definitely. Mm-hmm. And before we move into, your involvement with the Student Innovation Center and Innovate, I wanted to touch a little bit about, For All Humanity, the business that you own and run.
Yeah.
When reading up on it, I was particularly interested because I have a soft side, I'd like to say, for businesses behind that type of nature and mission. I actually went to Haiti junior year of high school as like a mission trip.
Yeah.
And that trip really changed my life, seeing a completely opposite world to yours.
Yeah.
And I think a lot can be said to, the involvement that needs to take place for people and students today, maybe who don't know what they want to do, but realize that they want to make an impact on other people's lives, and that, roles like that and businesses like that are at the forefront of their mission. And I think your business does a great job of making sure that's clear. So being a business owner and being in that type of field, what does For All Humanity mean to you as an owner?
Yeah, that's a really great question. As when I started, so I started that company when I was 24, and I am now 32. So I've had it a while.
Sure.
And honestly, it's changed over time as far as what it means to me. I think when I first started, I had these like grandiose plans that I was going to change the entire industry, and just impact, have massive impact. And I would still like to do that, but I think now where my heart lies and where my emphasis lies is really just changing the lives of the women that I work with. That's central and the most important to me now, as opposed to trying to change an industry. It's so true. There's I can't remember the exact quote, but it's, the most impact are just small acts of good, right? And that will create a massive wave, and really change things. And so if you think about that, right? If I change the life of one woman and she can provide for her kids and they can have an education, then there's a ripple effect, right? And if you can do that for all of the women that I work with, which is about 35, an entire neighborhood can be changed by that, right? And so it's these smaller acts that really create that big movement. And so that's really where my focus lies now, which it's kind of a heavy thing to carry. I do feel the weight of that really, how I run my business directly impacts the lives of others. And, maybe that's how all small business owners feel. I'm not sure. But that's really how I feel. And it's really about making those small changes that add up.
Absolutely.
So,
It's funny you say that, because that also jogged my memory back to the trip I had at Haiti. And I remember one of the leaders, the vice principal, who was a leader on the trip, and a friend of mine, emphasized to us, the reality of Haiti and situations like that. He said, he blatantly said, he sat us down and he said, you're not gonna change Haiti. You're not gonna alleviate all of these problems. It's going to take time. It's always going to be here, and it's always something that needs to be addressed, regardless of where you are, and I agree with you. Those small changes, as much as we think they're insignificant, can make an extreme impact on people. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's honestly why I also came back to grad school, because I was thinking, again, how can, with this idea of changing the industry, or what small things that I can do. And I honestly think there's also I can have an impact on those going into the field, you know. So as once I get my PhD, I intend to be a professor, and then the impacts that I can have on the you know, the next wave of apparel industry professionals hopefully will also, you know, change the industry as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So coming back to Iowa State, you said you said your mom is from Ames, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Did she go to Iowa State?
She did. I'm actually the fourth generation of Iowa Staters in my family.
Wow.
Yeah. Woo, Iowa State.
Yeah, those Cyclones.
Go
It's
Cyclones.
exciting. Yeah, it's absolutely exciting. And I think you coming back as a student to, you know, better yourself, but also involve yourself a little with the awesome department is, you know, it's a really great thing. And I think you're doing, you know, a great job, especially with Innovate 1858 within our newly opened Student Innovation Center.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get a little bit into that. I talked with Stephen McKinney on our last episode about Innovate. So you collaborate with him on a daily basis. And I talked with him about the mission of the store and maybe a little bit about, you know, what the store stands for, and also, you know, the Student Innovation Center's impact on students. So can you share your insights about what you think Innovate 1858 is about?
Yeah. So let's go back and talk about the Student Innovation Center, because I really think that that's like key here. I mean, I think the mission of that center is amazing, right? To pull students from different walks of life and different programs, and to say, hey, let's work to get together and like let's create something new. I think that that's, you know, awesome, and you don't see that on every campus across the US. So I think that that's is awesome that is here at Iowa State. And along the same lines of that collaboration and creating something new is the retail store, right? The retail store, you know, there's only a handful of student-run retail stores in the country. So again, this is new. This is something that's not really done. And so I think that that's really, really cool. And then on top of that, we are promoting entrepreneurship with carrying student-made goods, right? So it's really this culmination of giving students hands-on learning experiences, those who staff the store and who work with us on marketing and on merchandising, giving them hands-on experience, but also industry experience for those entrepreneurs on campus, that we might be their first store to carry their work. And what a cool experience for them to get to have that experience and to fine tune their skill sets and their business before they go out and really launch it. I think that that's really, really cool. So really this whole idea around the store is innovation, right? It's creating something new. I think honestly has been a great thing for the students this past semester, and I believe it will only continue to have a bigger impact as we move on.
Absolutely. And we were talking about how this retail store and the Student Innovation Center is something that is extremely rare across the U.S. and college campuses. And I've never really thought about that. I thought that maybe there were, people before us that did it and stuff like that. But Iowa State is really cracking down on, the future of innovation and students. And it surprises me that, we're at that forefront for students to get involved and, everything like that. So it's very cool to see, the opening of the store. And I'm excited to see, like you said, how it's going to progress in the future. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it'll be awesome.
So what are your day-to-day responsibilities for the store? I know you manage the digital aspects, so like the marketing and social media. So tell me a little bit about, your team and collaborative activities and responsibilities that you have.
Yeah. So I worked direct with Bella. So she is an undergrad, and I know, Mark, you know her very well. So I worked directly with her, but before the semester began, I laid out a marketing calendar, right? And it basically told us exactly what we were going to be doing throughout the semester. And that I think is key for whoever is going to do marketing as their profession, is really to lay it out and to get a big picture idea of the whole thing, so it's all cohesive. So you're not trying to do this here and do this there and let's maybe try this thing over here, but to lay it out first. So really that's done first, and then the day-to-day stuff is just making sure we follow the calendar, which is not super exciting at all, the way I said that. But I mean, it is, because what's so fun about this is, as a startup, there and also as a larger company, but really as a startup, you can see the direct link between what you're doing and sales, right? So there was an email that we sent out last week, and you can see we sent the email, and then all these sales came in, right, from our online store. And I think that's really cool, is for students to be able to see my actions had a direct effect on sales and the success of the store. So I think that's really important, as well as for students to see that correlation. But really, the day-to-day stuff, it is pretty much making sure that we're on schedule with the big picture marketing calendar.
Mm-hmm. And when starting up, you talked about the calendar formation and stuff like that. I talked with Steve a little bit about how, given the reality of, the pandemic and stuff like that, a lot of things had to change. Stephen was talking about the events that you had planned for in person, and all these little things that you think would have enhanced the impact that the store had on students in this semester. So how has that changed given the reality of the pandemic, and how are you guys at Innovate coping with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think all retail at this point are trying to understand, how do we deal with this pandemic? But it's just being creative, right? And not losing your customer. We're different because we didn't really have a customer base to start out with, because we are a startup. Mm-hmm. But it's really just the connection, right? People want to buy from people. They want to have that connection. And I think even more so now in the pandemic, where we're supposed to, stay away, and, so socially distance. And, I honestly was in quarantine for about half the semester. So not seeing people was hard. And so you do want to connect. And I think that that's a big thing in any sort of the marketing, is having that human connection and telling our story, telling the story, not only of the store, but also of the makers behind the products that we carry. And so we do that in a number of ways. So we had what we called maker chats, where we would sit down with the makers and they would talk to us about their inspiration and their design process. So we did that. And then we would also, one thing that would be good is, you know, doing polls, right? Asking customers, what do you like? What do you don't like? You know, again, that human interaction. Moving forward for next semester, looking at virtual events, some sort of in-person, yes, but virtual events. And what does that look like? And we're still trying to work through exactly how we would do that. But again, it's that human connection. You can't lose that. That's really important.
Absolutely. And a little bit about the future of the store. If you look at it big picture, you like to talk about looking at things from a marketing perspective, big picture. Yeah. What does the future of the store, let alone the Student Innovation Center, look like to you?
Yeah, I'm honestly very excited. I think it's going to be awesome. Excuse the pun. No, I am excited. I'm excited to continue to work with the students. They are very creative. I think, you know, they think of things that I would not, because I am, you know, I have my way of thinking, and they have a different way. So it's really nice to have their insights and their perspective. So I'm excited for that, to get to work again alongside the students. And then I'm also excited to have more student makers in the store. We had our student pitches back in November, and it was really exciting and inspiring to hear the passion behind the makers, and, you know, what they love to create. And so I'm really excited to bring that to the store as well in the spring.
Absolutely. How do you believe AESHM is preparing the next generation of students, specifically within the apparel, retail, and fashion industries, and maybe other areas that we discussed in this podcast, like nonprofit?
Yeah. So I also work with Dr. Neem in her her entrepreneurship class. And what I love so much about that class is it helps foster entrepreneurial skills. And again, that's also the same thing that the retail store fosters as well, is this way of saying, okay, I have this idea. How do I make it work given these constraints, right? Because there's always going to be constraints. You're never going to have the perfect conditions for a business, right? Or for an idea. There's always going to be constraints. But what constraints help you do is be creative, right? So that's what I love, not only about that entrepreneurship class, but also the store, is that thinking through, okay, here's my idea. This is what I think will work to promote the store or to launch this business. But then here's the reality of, you know, my budget, the pandemic, whatever it may be. Okay, how do I get this idea to work with these constraints? And that to me is so exciting, to help the students think through that, because that's going to be exactly what they do when they're in when they're in industry. They're going to have to think through, okay, here's this idea, but how do I really make it work? And so I think that our department is doing a wonderful job preparing students for the industry, specifically with entrepreneurial skill sets. I firmly believe, if nothing else throughout this entire time we've talked, is entrepreneurial skill sets are, I think, an absolute must for students going into industry, because it sets you apart, but it also helps you think creatively about how to solve problems. And I think, given how the world has changed with the pandemic and everything else, they're an absolute needed skill set. So I think that's our department is doing a great job with that.
Awesome response. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be to students who are looking to get into the areas that we talked about? I know that you have a variety of skills and experiences, and it's good to recognize that, because you have insights into some areas that maybe students aren't really sure about, or you have a story that you emphasize is very unique and different. And even though you didn't have a path at first, you learned, you grew, and you're always trying to find new ways to better yourself and better others. So what would your advice be to students who are looking to get into those same industry areas?
Yeah. So I've learned the most by failing. And so I believe in failing up or failing forward, right? You learn from your mistakes, you learn from them, and you move on. So that would be one of my things for students, no matter what area they want to get into, is fail often and fail well. And then my next thing would be, I'm interested in a lot of different things, obviously, from my varied past. And I would say, they have all helped, right? So if you are interested in dance or in art or in whatever, there's no sense in not pursuing that or not taking a stab at it just because it doesn't fit your idea of, this is what I need to do for my career, right? You can always take an art class, or you can always take a dance class, or you can always, maybe you really want to weld. I have no idea. Sure. But there's no sense in not doing those small things just because they don't fit into your skill set, because you're going to pull skills from those that are probably very applicable to what you're doing or what you will do in your career. So I think, be creative, try things, and then fail often and fail forward. So
that's very good.
Those would be my two things.
Very good advice. That's all I have. Zoe, you were an inspiration to me.
Oh my goodness! Thank you, Mark.
And I'm sure any students or individuals listening can find some value in what we've talked about today. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh my goodness, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. And like always, the Student Innovation Store, although typically open Monday through Friday from 10 to 5, over winter break from the 14th to the 23rd will be opened 10 to 3 Monday through Friday, and then closed Saturday, Sunday. They're located at 606 Bissell Road in Ames, Iowa, and you can always check out Innovate 1858 and the work that Zoe has done, as well as all of the students who are involved with Innovate 1858 online at www.innovate1858.com. Once again, Zoe, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, everybody, have a good day. We'll see you in episode 6.